Welcome back. Today is recognized nationally as the annual Transgender Day of Remembrance, dedicated to commemorating the lives lost to anti transgender violence and raising awareness about the ongoing violence affecting the transgender community. Destination Tomorrow is a grassroots agency committed to providing services for the LGBTQ plus community. They firmly believe that no individual should be compelled to leave their neighborhood to access LGBTQ plus specific services. Here now joining me is the Chief Operating Officer of Destination Tomorrow, Alex Santiago. Alex, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, as I mentioned, today is Transgender Day of Remembrance. Can you shed light on the significance of this day and why it's crucial to commemorate and remember those lost to anti transgender violence?
Well, it's important because every life is sacred, and for your life to be taken just because of your gender expression is it's crazy. We live in a free country, or supposedly live in a free country, and people are being murdered because of who they are, and you know that's crazy.
Now, in the past few years, there has been a surge in legislation restricting gender affirming care and other critical healthcare treatments for trans youth. How does this contribute to a climate of violence against the transgender community, and what can individuals and policymakers do to counteract these trends?
Well, Destination Tomorrow has an office in Atlanta, and we were one of the states where the legislation was passed. And just from being in the community, we've seen a surge, not necessarily of people being murdered because of the translation, but a rise in suicide. So it's very, very important that legislation is not passed when it comes to restricted gender affirming care. These are people's lives at stake, and to tell a kid who knows who he is or who she is that um, your government doesn't approve of this, so we're going to strip that right from you. At the ages that they are, they don't understand that, and like I said, there's been a surge in suicide. So I believe that our community needs to come together, and we need to rally. We need to go to the state capitals in these different cities and show them, that we're serious about protecting our youth.
Now, you said something that I thought was really important, and it may like I know initially we talked about how the violence and how how sometimes people are murdered, but violence doesn't always have to look a certain way. Can you talk about the importance of recognizing the different types of violence and how it's been affecting this community?
Yes, I believe there also has been a surge in drug overdose as well, and I believe that that's an act of violence, because to not be able to live your authentic life and not having a support system, a lot of times people go to drugs. That's their way of coping with the depression and with not understanding why they're not being accepted. So to me, that's violent. um, Suicide, someone who's not able to feel free and live in peace because of who they are, and then they're not able to cope. That's violence. So you're right. It's not just someone putting a gun to someone's head or someone stabbing someone.
Now, with the rise of anti-transgender legislation, how do you see, the mental health impact on? How do you see this, impact many transgender individuals and their mental health? And what role do community-based programs play in providing support during these challenging times?
It most definitely weighs on your mental health. I'm a trans man, and I remember when I first came out, like I wasn't accepted, by my family, and I suffered, depression. And I was fortunate enough at the time to have very good health insurance, and even though my family wasn't around to to support me mentally, I did have a support system, and I don't know where I would be if I didn't have access to healthcare or access to those few, that supported me. So I think it's very, very important that organizations like Destination Tomorrow and other organizations in the community provide some type of support groups, mental health resources, mental health referrals, because sometimes we're all that these kids have.
Now, I'm so glad that you mentioned that. I want to go a little bit deeper. And, can you just talk about how does your organization work with at-risk transgender individuals, and what impact have you seen on this community through your gender-affirming community building programs?
Well, I can tell you, at our Atlanta office, we have gender and name change clinics, and just to see these people come in, just to get something as simple as a what we may consider simple as a name change, and to see their reactions and to see the tears on their faces because they're able to actually have their ID match, their gender finally. It's things like that that Destination Tomorrow provides. In our Bronx office, we have support groups where the kids can come and is able to just dance and and have fun and be around other kids who identify the same way that they do. There's nothing to me more important than having someone that has your back, and these kids know that Destination Tomorrow has have their back.
Now, I love that you mentioned, just the idea of dancing and kind of being with community, because the Transgender Day of Remembrance, not only commemorates lives lost, but it celebrates resilience. And I think
Absolutely.
that a lot of the time when we're dealing with marginalized communities, we focus on pain, but there's also a space to kind of like focus on joy and, how coming together can build resilience. So, can you just share some inspiring stories of resilience within the transgender community that you've encountered through your work with Destination Tomorrow?
When I tell you every day that I'm in the New York office, someone comes through that door not knowing where they're going to lay their head at night, not knowing when they're going to get their next meal. And when they walk out of that door, they have a smile on their face, because we provided a resource that they didn't have before. um, and just they look at us as a family, not just providers. And I think that that's important too. Our CEO Sean has relationships with community in the Bronx where some of these kids even call him dad. So it's just amazing. I love working here. There's no other place I could be, or I would want to be, because just seeing the hope, on some of these kids' faces. Not even kids, sometimes we get people who decide to transition, late in life. And just to see them walk out of that door with hope on their face, it makes it worth it.
And I think that's so wonderful that you brought that up, because I think that there needs to be a spotlight on children, but there also is a spotlight on people who, unfortunately, maybe back in the day they didn't have these services, and it took them a little bit longer to come out and kind of live their lives authentically, as who they are. Can you just talk about how Destination Tomorrow has something for any stage or where you are on your journey to self discovery?
Yes, we have youth groups. We have groups for trans women. We have groups for trans men. So it doesn't matter if you're 14 or if you're 55. We have something for you. We provide so many services in both of our locations that a lot of organizations who are in the same area, they don't provide. And I think that's why, Destination Tomorrow is home to a lot of people, because we don't care um, how old you are. We don't care your race. If you need help, we're going to be there.
Now, considering the emphasis on economic, social, and mental empowerment, can you share specific examples of programs or initiatives that Destination Tomorrow has, to implement and achieve these goals?
We have an amazing academic enrichment program led by Dr. Gloria Pope, where we provide GED classes, GED testing. We have a financial literacy program where you can learn about credit. We set you up with bank accounts through one of our partners at TD Bank. I mean, there's there's nothing that we can't provide for our community.
And I also want to like highlight that a little bit more, because I think for people outside of the community, these are things that a lot of people don't have to think about. For many people, just going to the bank is just
Mhm.
another thing to do on their daily tasks. But can you talk about how this may be a challenge for members in this community?
It's definitely a challenge, and I'll even give you one more challenge, and that's voter registration. When you don't have your ID doesn't match how you present, you're not comfortable, going into certain spaces, like going to register to vote or voting with your the name that you no longer use or the gender that you don't identify with. It's the same with walking in a bank. It's the same with the things that a lot of people take for granted. Catching a flight. I know one particular person who would drive everywhere that they would go because they did not feel comfortable going through TSA with their ID not matching their appearance. So that's one of the reasons why I believe that our gender marker and name change and gender marker clinic is very, very important because it gives people access to things that they didn't have access before simply because they didn't feel comfortable or safe.
Now, could you talk a little bit about, the importance of ensuring that, people have, programs like this in their neighborhood, especially like, a place like in the Bronx here in New York. Oftentimes, a lot of people have to go to the outer boroughs, to get some of these services. So, could you talk about the importance of having something like this in the Bronx?
Oh, it's very important because a lot of times people aren't going to go where they're not comfortable, and if the Bronx is home, then they would want resources home. And I don't believe, I know that's one of the reasons why Sean wanted to um, have our offices in the Bronx because there weren't any resources. There aren't any resources outside of Destination Tomorrow. And he doesn't feel like anybody should have to go outside of where they live to get resources. And that's why now, we're a one stop shop.
Now, I also want to highlight something that I think is super important. Not only is it in the Bronx, so people feel a little bit more comfortable because it's in their neighborhood, but the people that are part of Destination Tomorrow are also a part of the community. And I noticed that sometimes when we have organizations that are helping marginalized communities, sometimes the people helping don't look like the demographic that they're giving
Mhm.
assistance to. So can you talk
Right.
about, what your experiences has been like, working this organization where people can see themselves reflected in the people who work at Destination Tomorrow?
Yeah, I think that's another reason why we're so successful within our community because we have the Bronx, as you know, is very Latinx prominent. So we have several staff that speak Spanish. Um, we have staff that, like you said, live in the community. So they see them, in the grocery stores. They see them walking down the street. So it helps them feel safe. It makes them comfortable, because they feel like we're family, like I mentioned, before. So I think it's very important to be a by us for us type of community-based organization.
And how do you ensure that the voices of transgender and gender nonconforming individuals, especially those from marginalized communities, like as you mentioned, in neighborhoods that are predominantly Latino or some predominantly African American, how do we make sure that their voices are heard and representative in the initiatives that we support?
We have to, I believe at Destination Tomorrow we do that because we're always fighting for, the most marginalized of our community. You'll see a lot of organizations or a lot of allies fighting for the LGBTQ community, but the T is always silent. It's like a marginalized community within a marginalized community. So I believe, at Destination Tomorrow, that's why we focus so much on the trans community and making sure that their voices are heard and that they're seen.
Now, what are some ways that, larger organizations that, often may, stick to supporting LGBTQ communities during the month of June? What are some ways that they can do that so that it's not just in the month of June, but that this is like ongoing support and it kind of bridges that gap between one community to another?
Right. I think the month of June has become more of a marketing tool for these big companies because they know, it's Pride Month and they can get out there and they can have the rainbow flags on their buildings and, have the rainbow colored mugs at their shops. But to make a true impact, I believe that they need to be in community 365 days a year. They need to support the grassroots organizations who are on the ground fighting every single day for this community. They need to fund organizations that are giving the money back into the trans community instead of giving it to these larger organizations who are gatekeeping. I believe that's how they can help.
Now, I want to, kind of highlight what people can do within the community, within the LGBT community. Q community, because you mentioned that the T is often, a marginalized community within a marginalized community. So, what can, people within the community and people outside of the community do to ensure that transgender individuals feel safe, whenever they're doing their daily tasks or whenever they're in their communities as well?
Not be a silent ally. You know, a lot of times when it doesn't affect someone personally, then or they just see a story on the news and it doesn't have any effect on them. They don't do anything. But I feel like if you're a true ally, then you will speak up. You will walk the rallies. You will protest in front of the government buildings that are trying to pass these outrageous legislations. You have to stop being silent.
Well, we've had the pleasure to talk with Destination Tomorrow so many times, but for those who don't know, where can they go to learn more information about your organization and some of the resources that you provide?
Before we do that, can I say that um, we did a memorial slideshow to to commemorate to those that we've lost today,
Hmm.
and there are 36 names on this slideshow.
Wow.
That's crazy. And I just wanted to put that out there so you can see like this is real life for us every single day. And to create that slideshow with 36 human beings that were lost this year, it took a toll on us. So I just wanted to put that out there so people know that there are real people that we see every day and real people that we're losing every day.
And is
So I was gonna say, so to answer your question and to
mhm.
find out more about Destination Tomorrow, they can go to our website, which is www.destinationtomorrow.org. And it talks about all of our programs. It has our address, our phone number for anyone who may need any assistance.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really important conversation, and kind of highlighting, a lot of us may know or may hear it, but as you mentioned, it's not enough just to do it once in a while or in the month of June. So I truly appreciate you, taking the time to speak with us about this.
No problem. Thank you again for having me.